And go.
Hi. As you can see here, I am here to suggest that as a school, we have a fundamental problem with how we are currently working with our parking system. We have a very functional parking lot as it is right now. We have been working with making sure that turning is okay. We have no one turning right out of the parking lot between the hours that it's most busy as a way to make sure it's safe for everyone, but it's small. And unfortunately, that means that we don't have the ability to actually have all of our driving students obtain a parking spot. We have a waiting list this year, and we've had small waiting lists before, but they've always been to the point where everyone who needed a parking spot was able to get to the school reliably and easily. But this year, as someone who has gone from walking to school, because I used to live right down by the library, to now living almost in Milwaukee, where I'm driving half an hour to school and then walking from the library because I didn't know that I needed a parking spot because I didn't know I was moving at the time. Not having that parking spot became an issue, which is why I would like to present the idea that we should have a volunteer busing service, at least during the winter, during Wisconsin's coldest months. So why? It's Wisconsin, it gets very cold. As you may know, we have a winter storm coming over the weekend. And speaking from my personal years of walking to and from school, I can tell you that in the mornings, those sidewalks are not salted. They are covered in ice half the time. And students are going to be walking to and from the school basically on an ice rink at an elevated level, where if you aren't ready for it, you will fall. Personally, I've fallen down that hill on the way up. It wasn't fun. I fell on my butt and went right down like a sled. And I stopped, thankfully, before I hit the street, because that would have been a little interesting. But because of that experience, that has made me think about how we can make our transportation systems to the school better. How can we make it so every single student is getting here reliably, on time, and safely? And then with class materials, I'm in the band. I have to transport a trombone to and from school. When I was walking, trying to get that trombone up the hill in the morning, that didn't work out too great. It gets heavy. You walk half a mile carrying an instrument, marching is great and all, it gets you tired. And walking up that hill in the snow makes it much worse. And you also have students who are carrying delicate projects. What if it's raining? What if it's snowing? And they can't get someone to take them to school. It doesn't seem fair to risk them losing their entire project because of some bad weather on the day it's due. And at the same time, we can't expect every single teacher to allow an extension on a project-based summative or even formative because of bad weather. That puts too much strain on the teacher to try and grade it at the last second, while also making sure that our students might not even be able to do the project properly if the weather does affect their project. And trying to move that to and from school, I've seen art classes try and move entire sculptures, and I've seen rain mess up quite a few. I've had friends vent at me that they had to restart their entire project because it all broke. And then we have Key Club, we have NHS. And those are great volunteer opportunities for students that help students find those volunteer opportunities. However, some students within those programs still struggle to find those volunteer hours. You have students volunteering for concerts and concessions. And concessions, I get, is one of the most popular ways to do it because a lot of students love supporting their own clubs, and getting volunteer hours for it makes it even better. But adding just one more way for students to get those volunteer hours, it makes everything for the student easier. But how? How can we get our student volunteers to want to sign up to do this program and to make sure that it's safe? Obviously, the sign up part is easy. If a student wants volunteer hours, they can sign up to run one of the shuttles. But as a school, we also need to make sure that we are doing this in a way that doesn't put any students in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that is easily your biggest concern.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know teen drivers are the most dangerous drivers on the road.
Yeah, there's maybe some debate in there, but yeah, go ahead.
As an average, at least.
Sure.
And because of that, we can use this program to reduce the number of teen drivers
Mm-hmm.
that are on the road at one time, even if there's more teens on the road. Because we can have one group of students driving to the library and they meet there. And they won't be parking in the library's parking lot. We've already established last year, year before, it happens every year. As soon as we have more students getting their driver's licenses in the spring, they will try to park at the library.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my sophomore and my junior years, there's always an announcement, students, you cannot park at the library. And as someone who is now parking on the street by it, I see it filling up more and more every day.
Mm-hmm.
Start of the school year, we had maybe 15, 20 cars.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're at 30. As soon as we hit spring, we'll have more students driving. It's going to hit 40, even 50 probably.
Okay.
And because of that, I want to make sure that we have a way for students to get to school, that they know what the timing is, because you don't want students missing valuable class time when they are just trying to learn the timing of how to drive to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then as where we've established, the Pewaukee Public Library is probably the closest major landmark
Mm-hmm.
that has enough available street side parking where we can actually make it carpool.
Mm-hmm.
We can have students walk down to the library not during its service hours, not loitering in its area.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a car pull into the parking lot, pick people up, and leave. We aren't loitering in the library.
Whose car is it that's going? Is it the student that?
The student volunteers.
Okay, so the student who has the parking spot up top, possibly,
Yes.
is going down and getting these kids.
Yes.
All right.
Or they could do it as part of their way to school.
Okay.
And obviously there is some accountability. If the driver is late and that's not communicated, we can't expect the students who were expecting that driver to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make sure that we are picking responsible students who will be on time,
Mm-hmm.
who will communicate any necessary changes that they need to happen to the schedule as they happen,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure they're safe. Personally, I would recommend having a driving test for the school, having it set up where students need to demonstrate over a period of time they are safe drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I myself wouldn't qualify because I have a speeding ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not say that I myself am a good candidate to be a driver for this program. But take someone who doesn't have any driving infractions, did well on their driver's test,
Mm-hmm.
has an established history of being a safe driver. This program may only be available to seniors because of that requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of seniors, or a lot of students, don't get their driver's licenses until their senior year or until their junior year, and they need to establish that good history.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to keep the students safe, we need to have that level of knowledge and trust in students. And then I'd just like to, any questions? Wrap up with any questions?
Okay. Mr. Reed, do you have any questions?
For me, the thing I think about is the legalities of all of it and whether or not, from a district standpoint, if it's something that would even be attainable as far as having students drive other students. I don't know how that all works, and I don't know if you're able to provide any insight into that, but that's where my mind kept going.
I wasn't able to find anything on the school's legal obligation with that. As a school program, I don't think this has been done anywhere because I couldn't find anything on it. However, I do know for a fact that students carpooling is an established thing that happens. You see students who, let's say, only one person in their neighborhood has a car. You can fit 3 or 4 people in that car, drive to school.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that working, and there are students who get to school like that. I've known people who would hop in and get to school that way. So because of that, I think it makes more sense to also extend the idea of carpooling and having the library street parking function more as a park and ride
Mm-hmm.
type area than as a just stick your car there during the school day and come back and grab it later.
So there'd be zero way we could have students drive students like that from a school district perspective, the liability associated with it, just like we wouldn't be able to do it. But a couple ways we could do what you're suggesting, and I think there's certainly some merit to it. Number one is there could be a student-driven initiative around, whatever you want to call it, like random acts of kindness or whatever, where we start to, have a culture where somehow you promote it, where kids drive, when they're coming to school in the morning, they drive through there and just pick up any kids that are hopping out of their car. Like, I want to be a good guy. Like, I just want to be a good guy, and I'm like, hey, hop in. I'll give you a ride up to the rest of the way. So you could go with an initiative that was student driven, that wasn't something the school district said, give kids rides, because like then it's our responsibility in the event that there's some sort of accident.
Because then you have to insure it as well.
Correct. And so, but if students said, let's make this a thing where we help each other out, we want to have a better learning community, we want to, this is a way we can brighten somebody's day, like that would be something that you could do. The other thing that, your argument around the damaged projects and other things when it's inclement weather, the safety of the sidewalk, when it's snowing out, those sorts of things. We have the vans, and so if I could find a couple of staff members in the morning, so it's 7:05, it's pouring rain outside, like, hey, let's grab the keys of the van and we'll just start doing loops, and we'll go down there, and anybody who's getting out of their car, we'll just, hey, hop in, and then we bring them back up. Like, we could do that. Mm-hmm. And we could use the systems that, the vans that we already have, assuming that they're there, and just about every single day they're sitting there in the morning. Mm-hmm. And so it might be one of those things where on those bad weather days, like, we would have to remember, like, hey, let's go pick up kids and make some kids' day, like we'll do it. Yeah. So it's our way of doing random acts of kindness. And I think that would be if Mr. Reed had set up his resource, because there's sort of two shifts. There's the shift that comes at 7:30, and then there's the shift that comes at 8:10. Mm-hmm. And so we'd have to kind of do both. But if Mr. Reed had, whatever for resource, nobody signed up and he's open, like, he'd come down and be like, hey, I'll run the shuttle today and help kids out since it's really crappy outside. Yeah. So, I think there's things we could do as a staff to get where you're going. I don't know that we could do it every day, because, like, we would have to hire somebody that would do it.
If it was every day, yeah, you'd have to hire an entire new staff member, make it a whole new position, and I get it financially and paperwork and legality-wise, that's a lot.
Right. Well, and people, from the standpoint of selling that to the community, people are going to be like, they're high schoolers, they can walk 2 blocks. Like, I used to walk 2 miles to school. It's that whole kind of mentality. Yeah. But maybe there'll be a point in time in the future where we have the flexibility where we could have somebody kind of run that in the morning. But I really think on those bad weather days, because I was actually thinking this morning, I was pulling in and I was looking at the staff that volunteer they don't volunteer, they get paid to do traffic in the morning. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, next time it's pouring rain or something, like, I'm going to bring my rain gear and I'm just going to tell one of them, like, hey, go inside, I got you covered today. Like, I'm going to do that. Like, that'd just be my way of being a nice guy and helping a staff member out. This would be another thing that we could do that would help kids out and, like I said, make some kids' day. So we'd have to advertise it some way, so if they saw the gray van, they'd be like, oh, I can hop in the van. Otherwise, you're going to have to explain yourself 18 times as you're trying to get people there. So,
and definitely having the teachers in there. The students recognize almost all the teachers, even if we haven't had class with them. I recognize Mr. Reed. I have never had a class with you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So there's that level of trust that's already built with the teachers that I understand. The only reason I didn't bring up the teachers as an alternative, as a possible option, is because when I was discussing this idea, bouncing ideas off of Mr. Calise, mm-hmm. he notioned that if you were looking for volunteers, there are teachers who might not necessarily want to do it.
Right.
And that's completely their choice.
Yep.
So I wanted to err away from having that be the norm.
Right.
Because you don't want to make anyone do anything.
Right.
And forcing this on someone wouldn't be right.
Right. And I mean, if we felt like we absolutely, like, this was an absolute must, like, we've got to do this for safety reasons, for whatever reasons it might be, the way we would go about it if we really got to that point is that we would just have everybody on a rotational basis. So today is Tyler's day, right? And so he's going to schedule himself 0 in resource and not be there, and then he's just going to run the shuttle for that time. And then the next day is going to be Mr. Stimpert's day. And he's, and so we would just rotate around the building, and then so you'd have to do it 3 times a year maybe. Yeah. So there are ways we could get there. I don't know that I don't know that there's such a demand like on nice weather days and whatever. But if it's like 2 degrees outside, or it's raining, or it's snowing, or whatever, I think those would be days where we could, and I think that'd be kind of a fun thing for us to do, to be like, hey, who wants to be a hero today? Let's go down and pick up some kids, like,
Yeah.
and I could win some points. I'm always
Yeah.
up for that, right? So, good ideas. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Reed?
No, I like it as well.
Cool.